So the cat one.
They're ponies. Oh, they're master dogs or ponies?
Oh, good point. Fantastic.
Hey, Janet. Nice to see you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Avid Reader, and welcome also to our Zoom audience who is here tonight. It is an incredible delight to finally bring you this event. Oh, my goodness. This was a very, very, very pandemic-riddled feat getting you up here, actually. So it's really exciting to finally do it, even though we do have COVID in Queensland now, whereas the last time we cancelled, we had barely any. But we're all here. We've all got our masks. So if you're not drinking, if you can wear your masks, that's a good thing to protect everybody. But I know there's quite a few people drinking. Cheers! So a couple of bit of housekeeping for everybody. Firstly, if you have your mobile phones, if you can switch it to silent, that would be awesome. And also, if you need the toilets are up those stairs and then across the corridor. So that's where the toilets will be for people here. People on Zoom, I hope you know where your toilets are. No, I'll let you guys. I won't COVID up. You can hear me. I'm used my fishwife voice for events, so hopefully the people in the back row can still hear me. And we won't COVID up the microphones for our guests tonight. So there are a couple of things. One of them is that the book is for sale at the counter. So if you don't have your copy already, you can race to the counter after the event and grab your
Or
book.
buy a copy for your friends, sisters, family members.
Remembering that we won't get the opportunity to get the in-person signing for a while if anything else happens in the world. So it's really great to grab it while you can, I think, for a signed copy. And to do the signing, we're going to be going outside at the end of the event. For those people on Zoom, though, we have a link to the book. So you can actually purchase the book online if you click on the link. And that way we can post you a signed copy because we'll get some more signed as well. So that will be great. I think that's all the people on Zoom. You'll be on mute for the duration, but if you text questions into that chat function that you've just got the link for the book in, you'll be able to send a question and hopefully we'll be able to get that at the end and get that answered at the end of the event. For the people in the room, you can just lift your hand up when it comes to question time. Very easy. Okay, I'd like to start tonight by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on, in this area, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and pay my deepest respects to elders past, present and emerging. And also, because we're going out on Zoom, I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of the lands that you are meeting us on as well. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land, and sovereignty was never ceded. So tonight it is my great pleasure to welcome our guests. We have Pip Courtney to my right. Pip Courtney became the host of Landline in 2012. After joining the program in 1993, she joined the ABC as a cadet in Hobart in 1986. Pip has won numerous awards for her agricultural journalism and in 2018 was inducted into the Queensland Press Club's Rural Journalism Hall of Fame. But it's more than her pedigree journalism that makes her a perfect choice to be in conversation with Lisa tonight. About 25 years ago, Lisa's friend and former flatmate, John, said he'd like her to meet his new girlfriend, Pip, and a lifelong friendship through ups and downs was made. So fantastic that we've got Pip in conversation with Lisa. And would you like me to introduce Lisa, or do you want that pleasure yourself?
Introduce Lisa. We'll see if we've got the same stories.
All right. My story is just from the back of the book.
I've got better ones than that.
I'm sure you do. Lisa Millar grew up in small Queensland town of Kilkivan. originally from New South Wales, so, I've got to be forgiven. Yeah, that's right. And always dreamed of having a big life. She studied journalism at the University of Queensland and began work as a cadet journalist on the Gympie Times before moving to Brisbane to work for The Sun. Lisa moved on to Win TV in Townsville before joining the ABC as the North Queensland reporter in 1993. Since then, she has reported from Canberra, Brisbane, Sydney, and more than 40 countries, including 12 years as a foreign correspondent in Washington, DC and London, while continuing to recover from a debilitating fear of flying. The number of traumatic and violent stories she reported on made her query the impact of trauma on the media, and she developed a passion for ensuring victims were treated respectfully by the media, and journalists, camera crews, editors and producers were also looking after their own mental health. She was the director on the board of the Dart Centre for Journalism and Trauma for 10 years. Lisa now lives in Melbourne and has been the co-host of ABC TV News Breakfast since 2019. Everybody welcome Lisa.
Welcome, everybody. So, Lisa, yes, we've known each other since 1996, and we've been to each other's weddings, been there for each other through some big ups and downs. And I have a shelf of books written by journos, Lisa, and every year I do an audit. Do you deserve to be here? And yours, I'll only ask that once, and it's a yes, and I'll never ask that again. It is wonderful, it's joyful, it's nostalgic and inspiring. And if ever there was a glass half full girl, which I think is a practice that we all need to work on all the time, it's you. And I enjoyed it on another level as well. I've always been too chicken to put my hand up for a posting, unless it was that island in Greece where there's 9,000 cats. That's the only posting I'd like. And what you and other correspondents, so there's a few in the audience, do blows my mind. I could hear these stories for hours because it's a unique, crazy, dangerous, amazing, full-on job. So welcome, everybody. She's finally out of Melbourne. So let's get stuck in. Well, Lisa, lots of people have...
turning my microphone on. That's making a little bit of a noise, but I'm not going to touch it.
Okay.
Should be right.
And I'm going to just hold it really still.
Okay. Well, Lisa, a lot of people have great tales about how they write, like Stephen King. He keeps office hours. And you'd never written a book before and you had to do it with a full-time demanding job. I just finished... If I was doing your job, I'd just have nana naps until my next shift. But and you hadn't written one before. So how did you start and how did you knuckle down? Because it is a discipline.
Yeah, and one that I had been approached a couple of times to do by various publishers. And in fact, one of the stories in the book is I need to credit another publisher who I didn't end up publishing with, because she rang me shortly after the new year in 2017, and she said, I think you should write a book. I was in London as the bureau chief then, and I said to her, I don't have time to write a book. I've just come back from a terrorist attack in Turkey. I cooked fish on New Year's Eve. I've left it in the kitchen. The place stinks. I left the heating on. I think my partner's left me. There's a note on the bed. I am not writing a book. And there was this pause, and she said, and that's your first chapter. And it does appear in one of the chapters. But so when I say that I had been reluctant, I had been really reluctant to do it. And I have to say thank you to Louise Adler, who many of you may know of. And she was the one who said, just write a couple of thousand words, see how it feels. And I went, no, don't want to do it. But because I'm such a goody two-shoes, I wrote the 2,000 words and delivered it to her in 10 days. And then I said to her, I've decided I don't want to write a book, but here is the 2,000 words you required. And she came back to me and said, well, that's a pity you don't want to write a book, because I've already passed it on to Hachette and they would like another 85,000 words. And I went, oh, damn. But if it wasn't for COVID and the lockdowns in Melbourne, I'm not sure it would ever have happened, because it did give me the time and space. We were only allowed out for an hour a day. And so I would go home from breakfast television at 9 a.m. and I would have the whole day stretching out ahead of me, not being able to leave my apartment. And I thought, oh, well, look, if I'm ever going to do it, now is probably the time to do it. But what I found interesting was how I ended up doing it, which was to treat it like a journalism assignment and basically get in touch with everyone who had been a part of my life. And I see a few faces in the audience here tonight that I would ring or contact and say, is my memory about December the 10th, 1991, when the sun closed, your memory? Like, is this what happened? And it was an incredible experience to go back through it and basically interview everyone. Some people who I had not spoken to for 20 or 30 years. And ironically, the man who created the Fear of Flying course that I did with ANSET emailed me just today to say, I'm so sorry, I've only just finished your book and I love it. Mm-hmm. And when I got in touch with him so long after having done the course, and his face eventually popped up on Zoom and it had taken me a while to find him, I felt so emotional. And I said, you changed my life, because I had had this extraordinary fear of flying, which was going to stop me following my dreams. And so it was lovely to hear from him today. But that's basically how I did the book.
Did you get any tips from journos that you've come across, or people who'd actually written a book, which might or might not be on my shelf?
Okay, has anyone read any of Sally Hepworth's books? The Younger Wife? Oh, she is fantastic. I love her stuff. I think she is more appreciated overseas than she probably is here in Australia at the moment, but she's written The Mother-in-Law, The Younger Wife, The Good Sister. Anyway, I heard a podcast that she did with Mia Friedman, and she was talking about how she writes books. And she said that she approaches it, she wakes up in the morning and she immediately writes 330 words. She called it the Dirty 330. And she wouldn't make a coffee, she wouldn't do anything. She would just say, I'm going to write the Dirty 330. It might not be any good, but then if that's all she's written all day, then that's pretty good. So I eventually contacted Sally to say hello and introduce myself and say how much she'd inspired me. And I said, I can't, your Dirty 330 really got me going through my book writing experience. And there was a pause. And she said, it's the nifty 350. And she said, what are you writing, a porn book? And I said, oh my God, we could create a lot of things here. Like, what about the naughty 340? She said, I can't believe you have Australianized this, Anyway, so yes, that was the advice that I took that was actually not actually accurate, but anyway, it helped me.
Sally Sarah once told me, when I said, what's the secret to writing a book? And she said, park your ass in a chair. And I thought, well, that's the guts of it, isn't it?
The breakfast hours helped, because on weekends even I would wake up at 4 a.m. and I'd think, well, just get up and start writing. And the last chapter, when I talk about looking out on Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne and seeing the dark, inky waters and the lights flashing on the horizon, is from those early mornings on the weekend.
I'm not sure who you think about when you write a story for the ABC, but did you have a reader in mind when you wrote this? Who did you think would want to buy it apart from your loyal friends?
Oh, steady. It's being released in the US now, Pip. Look, to be honest, I thought if the only people who read it are my family, then that is fine. And one of my sisters and one of my nieces is here tonight, and I know my other nieces are watching on Zoom, and I had the most extraordinary support from all of them. And in fact, I had a sort of family WhatsApp video meeting before I even signed the contract to write it, to say, listen, I might do this, and how do you feel about it? Because I'm going to be telling some of your stories too, and they were so supportive. So, I mean, it might sound a bit, I don't know, naff, but really I did honestly think that if the only people who read this are my family, then that's, and as my sister Wendy, and she and I drove out of the garage tonight, we saw a photo of Dad, and I said, and both my parents have passed away, and I said, I wonder what they'd make of this, the two of us heading off to this event. And yeah, so it has been so extraordinary to think that it has touched so many people and done as well as it has done. I'm just, every morning I wake up at 2 a.m. your time to go to work, and I see messages from people who've messaged in overnight, and I'm just so appreciative of it.
Well, Louise Adler's no fool. So who did she think would buy it, and who are you finding is buying it and messaging you and getting in touch?
People who have had a fear of flying, who've wanted to break through, people who have been fascinated by suddenly discovering what's going on behind the scenes when you watch your foreign correspondents reporting every day and thinking, okay, when you see Nick Dole in Ukraine and you see him on Breakfast News and you see him on 7 p.m. and you read the digital pieces, that's what's going on behind the scenes. People who have discovered that it's okay to say yes to life, and that no can lead you nowhere, but yes can cause a lot of dramas and chaos and everything else, but at least it can be a bit of an adventure. And just, yeah, that's who's reading the book.
And do you like getting that feedback?
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I try to respond to everyone, and I hope that I have people in the room here tonight. It's encouraging. I love it.
Now, you start the book with some history and your childhood and even your parents. Did you think about just jumping in with your career as a journalist and leaving the family history out? I mean, I've personally really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting. Look, Hachette, the publishers, said there are plenty of sort of roving foreign correspondent tale books out there, that they wanted a bit more of the sense of a small country background and how I ended up sort of being here. And that is a life that I still love and respect and I'm fond of. And even today, I'm still a member of the Kilkeven Community Facebook group. And tonight at the Bowls Club, they've got chicken schnitzel for $12 and rissoles for $12, and you can get an extra rissole for $1.50. And I just love that life, that there is this life that so few people have had the privilege of experiencing, and you see it a lot through your job, Pip. And I wanted to bring that to people when they were reading it, that it was a wonderful childhood, but it also made me dream big about, being overseas and exploring and doing things that I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I could do.
And you are very frank about the toll that your job took on you. Were you worried about revealing some of the costs that it took on you and being open with complete strangers?
Yeah, yes and no, because I feel like honesty was the best way to approach it. And Lee Sales, who's a great mate of mine, said to me, don't bother writing a memoir unless you're going to give people they feel that they something that they don't already know. So she was big on, if you're going to write a memoir, you got to be out there. You got to tell people everything. And I kept some things back because I thought my life is not a complete open book, but I did want people to understand why I'd got to the point that I had. And for those who haven't read the book, 2017, when I covered all of the terrorist attacks in Europe, and my dad died while I was doing a piece to camera in Ireland, in Dublin, and Wendy, who's here in the room, rang me and she said, look, I think Dad's going to die in the next hour or so. And I said to the cameraman, okay, let's do this piece to camera because in an hour I'm not going to be able to do it. That sense of needing to push on and this responsibility and commitment to have to do it and to show up. I wanted to kind of analyse that as well for me. And Pip, you and I have talked before tonight about talking about John, because this was one of the huge factors in our life together, because John Bean was such a great friend of mine, and it was actually Pip and John's wedding that my then husband and I had gone to in Tasmania when my fear of flying had reached its absolute peak. I mean, it was just...
Sorry about that.
Oh, I know. But it was good in a way. This is the thing. Like, I always try and sort of find okay, so it was pretty bad. Like, I got to your wedding and was checking the times for the Spirit of Tasmania to see whether I could actually drive back to Queensland from Tasmania, because I was so fearful of flying. And my then husband said to me, this cannot go on. We can't live like this with your fear ruling our lives. And so I always remember your wedding for being the point where my life did change, that I had to, your life changed in a really good way because you married John Bean. But so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you had a good time on the night.
Oh, yeah, there was plenty of champagne. So,
well, how did you conquer it? It was in your brain and it had burrowed in very, very deep.
Oh, yeah. Like when people say to me, oh, yeah, I'm a bit nervous of flying, I say, have you ever laid down on the floor of a plane because your body will not let you form the, figure to sit in a seat? Like the muscles were just, they could not get me into the seat. I used to vomit and have diarrhea if I knew that I was flying from Brisbane to Sydney on a 737. And I always got every flight. Like, I never stopped. And in the front row here is an old mate of mine, Willie Heron, who was in part of the comms team for John Howard. And she will know that in the 1996 election campaign, she would have watched me fighting this fear where I would just drink on the plane to try and overcome the fear, because it was the only way that I could get through it. It was so debilitating. And here I was dreaming of being an overseas correspondent. And, and so I ended up doing a fear of flying course. And from the time that I started the fear of flying course to when I actually felt like I had overcome the fear would probably be, I reckon, 5 years. Like, it took a long time and it was a lot of hard work, but I did it.
What did your dad, who loved flying, and you had the little plane, which is just, you bookend the book with, what's the call sign?
India Echo Charlie.
Yes. What did your dad think about the fact that you've had a scary experience on a little plane, but you were still scared of the big ones, which we really associate with safety?
Oh, he was so sad for me. He was so sad because he loved flying. And still to this day, I mean, my brothers have the apps on their phone, so if there's a noise of something overhead, they rush out to see what the call sign is and who it is, and is it a chopper or a plane? And Dad would just say, oh, Lassie, I can't believe you're going through this. They just genuinely felt sad for me.
I'm glad he didn't growl at you.
Oh,
that wouldn't have helped.
No.
But the book is filled with so much joy and a lot of laughter interspersed amongst these awful things that you cover as a journalist, and some near misses outside work as well. What makes you able to keep going and not end up a drunk? And,
I just took a sip of wine. I thought we organised to have a friend here tonight. Can I also say, I think it's very risky to actually invite anyone who's been up since 2 a.m. who has had a wine to speak to a crowd of people.
I got a text at 5:30, I'm on the double gins. I thought, holy Moses, this is going to be a wild ride tonight.
And I did say, Pip, you're the ringmaster. Look,
So what keeps you going and you don't lose your bundle, you don't end up being that person that people talk about and say, yeah, the job ruined her life and she's no longer a journo?
I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it is, I don't know how I've managed this, I want to say initially, because I've got no secret to it, but I have managed to reframe a lot of things in my life that when bad things happen, I am able to sort of look at it and go, okay, well, what's the silver lining here? Like, how can I actually turn this into something that's fairly decent? One of the very first examples of this that I remember is post my marriage breakdown. It was 2005. I'd just covered the hanging of Van Nguyen in Singapore. I'd done the second Bali bombing. I'd come home from the US. I was feeling a bit lost. And of course, you know, my marriage had broken down and I was going to a counsellor in the city in Brisbane, and I was driving along Ann Street and I stopped at traffic lights and this massive wind blew through and just scattered all these jacaranda flowers over my windscreen. I couldn't see out of the windscreen. And I just smiled and I thought, I'm going to be okay. Oh. I have just been, you know, scattered with flowers. And I told this story to someone and they said, you know, other people would put their windscreen wipers on, make a mess, go, oh, damn this, I'm going to have to clean the car, and they'd be grumpy all day, and that not everyone sees things that way. So I guess it is, even with the book, I think, well, okay, lockdown was pretty shitty, I've got to tell you, in Melbourne for 2 years. I had only just moved there. I'd never lived there. I knew no one. And suddenly I'm in a city which has become the most locked down in the world. But I wouldn't have got a book if I hadn't been through that lockdown. If I hadn't had the fear of flying, I wouldn't have had anything to write about. You know, like, it's just sort of trying to reframe things in my mind. So I do think at the end of the day, I have managed to be a pretty sane person.
Yes, well, we all know some former foreign correspondents who are not nearly as mentally healthy as you, Lisa. Do you think there's a reason that some people are more resilient? Like, did you learn this, or is it innate?
Yeah, look, I don't recall being that way early on. I don't know that I was born with it. I think that I have, and sometimes it's hard. I mean, honestly, 2017, I don't say in the book that I had a breakdown, but pretty much that's what was going on. You know, it was a very difficult time. And I recall coming home to Australia in the August, my relationship had broken down. Things were happening. Like, I'd gone to interview someone the year before who'd been this wonderful person, and I'd gone back to interview him. He was a farmer in 2017. And we rang him to say, hey, the story's going to air on Monday. And his secretary said, oh, he died. He died the day after you interviewed him. And it was this sense that everything was collapsing around me. And so that year, when I look at everything I've done, all, you know, the Sandy Hook school shooting, the Bali bombings, the hanging of Van Nguyen, there are so many things that have gone on, but I look at 2017 as being the most challenging year. So why was I able to pick myself up? Support from family, support from friends, good counselling. Like, I am never ashamed to say that I have used the ABC counsellors. I'm very happy to say, just do it. It's great to have a chat. You know, like, I will do it. I've done it during the last couple of years, quite frankly.
You visited me when you came back home, and that's the first time I've been worried about you.
Interesting.
Yes. In between when you sneezing because you're allergic to the cats.
I mean, really, it's a wonder our friendship has survived.
But the thing that struck me then, which was that you were a bureau chief, so you weren't just in trying to look after your own mental health. You were looking out for your colleagues who'd gone to the Grenfell Tower fire, and so you had an extra layer of responsibility, not just looking after Lisa Millar, but all of these staff. So, do you think that's that added an extra layer that you
not
were a
just
good
the
boss.
staff, not just the staff, Pip, but their wives and husbands and children, because they're all very isolated on the other side of the world. And when I say to a correspondent, I am sending you to the Nice terrorist attack and I don't know when you're going to be home, it's not just them that's affected, it's their wife, it's their 2-year-old, it's their 4-year-old. I mean, you are having such a big impact on an entire family, and that's the job. We know it and we love it. That's why we go. But it did weigh on me that every time I made a decision in the office, it was not just about one person.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, who has made the biggest impression on you? And can I divide that into two? First of all, talent, like they're people we interview, we call them talent. And secondly, colleagues, fellow journos or camera operators.
Oh, well, I love Phil Williams is, our former foreign correspondent, is just such a dream, and I miss him that he's not on air anymore, and you would have seen him in so many different places around the world. And also, can I tell a funny story about Phil? Because when I started on News Breakfast, I had a massively steep learning curve because I had never done anything like that before. And so there was one day, there was something happening. It might have been in the US, and Phil was over there. And the EP kept saying to me in my ear, the producers, you've got all these signals from people, so much going on. The floor manager's waving his hands and Michael's doing signals to me, and the producers in my ear saying, Phil, Phil, Phil. And I'm going, okay, well, I'll keep talking. They want me to fill. No, they wanted me to cross to fill. So I just kept talking and talking and talking. And then this woman's lost her mind. So Phil Williams and the camera crews, all of the camera crews. I mean, you are like family on the road, as you would know, Pip, when you go out there, and when you are feeling that you are going into dangerous situations, when it's just they're like brothers to you, quite frankly, and they know more about you often than your family knows about you. It's like, the wonderful cameraman, Tim Stevens, who was there the day when Wendy called me to say, hey, Dad's going to die. And Tim packed my bag in the hotel room, packed everything up, checked me out of the hotel. Like, everything about how they operate is just such a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And it just feels so good that I have remained friends with so many of them.
Well, they see you in your pajamas and without makeup.
Yeah. Having room service at 2 a.m. because that's the time in Australia that you're about to go off and do a live cross and, everything.
And if you added up all the people that you've interviewed from the day you went to Gympie to work on the paper, are there any people who stick in your mind as talent that interviewees that you'll never forget?
Yeah, I will never forget Veronique Posner, who is the mother of a young boy who died at Sandy Hook at the school shooting. I found her strength and her ability to take that incredible trauma. Noah was 6 years old. He was a twin, and Veronique agreed to talk to me, and I've stayed in touch with her and her husband, Lenny, and they have actually just this week had a very successful battle against the gun company. Yeah.
How many million?
73 million for the families. Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, that was in 2012. So that's a decade ago. And this is one of the things that I have always felt about my job, that I think it is one thing to be invited into someone's home, to be allowed to have that kind of access, but to then be invited back is something that doesn't necessarily happen. And Veronique and I have stayed in touch. I've re-interviewed her a couple of times, and I sort of feel like, that makes me feel satisfied with how I treat people, that she has felt that I have treated her with respect. And that's all I sort of, I don't want to cause any further grief with people who have gone through the worst moment of their life.
Well, that's a mark of a great and well-respected journalist.
I only
so
try.
pat on your back.
Honestly, don't. Yeah, I try.
The gun debate in America, like, how do you get your head around what happens there and doing stories over and over again and getting nowhere? And I suppose that's like with terrorism in Europe. Do you get to a point where you go, what are these? Are my stories achieving anything?
Oh, no. Well, I did feel that way when after I left America and everyone said, I can't remember the name of the school, and that's, that says it all, that it was a high school. I think it had the word palm in it maybe. And everyone said, oh, this is going to be the one that changes everything. This is going to change it. And I remember being back in Australia going, no, it's not. No. If 20 dead 5-year-olds don't change it, nothing's going to change it. And so I did feel a moment of sadness. But, hey, look at it this week. 73 million. You know what's going to happen is that the people who insure those gun companies, the banks, the insurance companies are going to say, do we want to do this? Really? Because it's going to cost us money. So they have made change. There has been change. But the gun debate in America was one that I struggled to sort of stand back from and be sort of, neutral territory, because I just thought there is nothing sensible about giving people AR-15 semi-automatics, especially after what we'd seen here in Australia.
You seem a very self-aware person when you read the book, but did you learn anything about Lisa Millar you didn't know while you were writing the book?
Taking a sip of wine. Yeah, I did.
I'll aid in a bet.
I realised that a couple of car crashes that I had that were very serious car crashes, one of them involving my mother and another one involving John, your husband, were actually fundamentally connected to the incident that I had midair in a small plane, and it was why my fear of flying then became much greater, and I had never connected them before. And I can remember when I was writing it, I rang Kate McMahon, who's a psychiatrist who was the managing director of the Dart Centre, and I said to her, oh my God, I've only just put it together that my fear of flying actually happened not after the incident in the plane, but after I had car crashes. And it was because I had then felt like I had lost all control, that nothing was something that I could handle. So the plane was one thing, but then with the car crash, I got hit by a drink driver in Canberra. He was speeding, he had his lights off, it was the middle of the night, came out of nowhere, and it just rammed home this sense of I am in someone else's hands here.
Do you have any regrets about making the job such a priority?
Oh, no, I don't. I don't have regrets about anything, actually, Pip. Look, I've missed a lot of events with my family. I know I talk about, mum and dad passing away. Mum died on sort of the last day that I was in the London Bureau, and I was heading home, and it was not expected. But they, I kept checking in with my siblings all the time and saying, do I need to be coming home? And they were like, no, oh my God, if mum and dad can't turn on the television and see you, then we're going to be in trouble. I don't have regrets. I think it is what it is. You make the choices that you've made, and that is life.
Yes. Now, obviously, my dirty little secret that I love cats is well and truly out there now. You're the voice of Muster Dogs.
Yes.
Can we still be friends?
Can we still be friends? I don't know. I am just so...
Another blockbuster on your hands.
Yeah, how wonderful. I was brought in at the last moment to Muster Dogs, but I'm so glad I was. And I just want to say I'm not allergic to dogs, but I am allergic to your cats, Pip. So, yes, we can still be friends, but we have to find neutral territory.
A real friend would go and get the shots, but anyway. We'll finish up a bit about News Breakfast.
Oh, yeah. Everyone wants to know, is Tony as cool as he seems to be? Does he have a girlfriend?
I just want to know if he had a cat, but anyway.
So
you've gone from this high pressure, never knowing when you're going to have to get the go bag and go. You've got a routine. It's Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
What's it like? Because you could be doing something light, then nailing some politician who's been trained to avoid the ever answering a question for their entire career. What's it like?
It wasn't what I anticipated doing. It honestly came out of the blue. And look, I love it. The hours are pretty brutal. Like, it is 3 a.m. alarm for Melbourne, so 2 a.m. your time. I just want to ram that home. 2 a.m. your time. Look, I have had moments that I think, if only I could tell my 16-year-old self, when Jason Donovan came and sat on the couch in his tighty-whitey jeans, and I just thought, this is hilarious. And there was also a moment when Gladys Knight and the Pips sat beside me on the couch, and I confessed to her that I massacred Midnight Train to Georgia at karaoke. And she said, oh, darl, next time you want to sing it at karaoke, you just call me and I'll come with you. And I'm like, oh, it's Gladys Knight. So it's just magical, and the team are wonderful. It is, like, you sort of, the alarm goes off, but the minute you walk into the office, everyone's there. They're all joyful. They're supportive. They are wonderful.
Your mum is a mystery figure in the book. I'm really curious to know whether, after the book came out and you and your siblings and family members, have you unpicked the mystery of Mrs. Millar?
Mum was very private, and I sought advice from my siblings to say, is it okay to even talk about Mum in the book? And because I was anxious about that. Yeah, have we learned more about Mum? I don't think so. Honestly, I wish Mum could be here tonight, and I would have so many more questions for her. I suspect that she would not answer them, but she would be very proud.
One thing that struck me in the book, and from knowing you, is the quality and longevity of your friendships. So you're away and you're not doing a 9-to-5 job while you're overseas. You can be out of contact in some godforsaken place for a long time. What is it that makes you such a great friend? And what's your advice on being a great friend when you're not in the same geography as your mates?
That's a really, I feel like I should be asking.
Good at it.
Yeah, I feel like I should be asking you that. I don't know. I just think, I didn't end up having children. I have a very large family and lots of nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews. And I think that I made the decision to be overseas for so many years, and that it's up to me to try and stay in contact with people. And whether it's friends or family, I do think that things just don't happen by magic. You have to put a bit of work in there.
And COVID meant that you had time to write the book. Do you think that that's part of the reason? I mean, there's many reasons why it resonates with so many of us. Do you think that's one reason, that people just needed to read something that gave solutions to when you're feeling crappy?
Yeah, I think my middle name is Joy, right? And I had, I know, it's Lisa Joy. Yeah, well, I think that I am someone who does try to find the joy in life, and I think people needed a bit of that. And I hadn't thought of the fact that the book was going to sort of land still when we were dealing with the pandemic, and that people would finish it and go, wow, I want to do crazy shit. I want to sign up for a triathlon. I want to do something I hadn't thought that I could do. I want to break through the fear. I want to just, be something. And so I love it that has been the impact on people, and that wasn't the intention in a way, but that has been the wonderful result of it.
Well, I think without realising, or perhaps meaning to, I think you've helped a lot of people with that reframing, finding the silver lining, looking for the jacaranda flowers to fall on your windscreen. I think they're all great little lessons, and we don't need to go to a self-help book because we get a ripping read along the way.
Thanks.
I just have one complaint. There just wasn't enough sex in me. That's just me. Leave it there. That could be part two. So that's all I have, Lisa.
You're ending on a sex question.
You brought it up early. I'm just doing the alternative
Did
ending.
not. Sorry, Chrissy.
Oh, you can talk about sex as much as you want.
There's a sex section here.
Yeah, there should be.
Next
anyway.
one can go there. Well, Lisa, thank
Thanks,
you for
Kim.
being so open and honest with us, and for being so open and honest in the book, because there is nothing worse than reading somebody's story and you go, I don't even know you, but I know you've left half the stuff out of your life, and, you know, they go in the bin because, you know, everything has to earn its keep on my shelf. So thank you for being so honest and open and giving us little tools to deal with life when it's not so great. And congratulations, it's a ripping read.
Thanks.
Who wants to ask a question?
Well, before we go to the audience here, I've got one from Zoom that came in a while ago. So I'll ask that to start us off, and then we'll go to the audience here. So a question from Zoom is, if you could interview anyone in the world, who would it be and what would you ask them? Very good question.
You know, someone who is actually, this may disappoint people, but it goes back to who is my 16-year-old self. I've always been fascinated by Boy George. I know. Yeah, really. And I mean, people say, oh, I want to interview the Queen. Well, she is never going to do an interview. It's never going to happen, and she's never going to say anything. But I have often thought, I think Boy George has had an extraordinary life with, he was so way advanced and ahead of his time. And I can remember to this day watching Karma Chameleon and thinking, this is someone who is really taking his life under his own control. And yeah, so that may surprise people, but that is the answer that I immediately give. But it's actually an honest one, and that is what I am known for.
Great. That's. I would like to hear that interview, actually. So yeah, anyone from the audience? So there's one here first, and then there's one back there. Yes.
Hi, Lisa. Did Fran Kelly, when she left after 17 years, getting up about the same time in the morning, give you any clues or hints about, or tips about how to survive those early mornings?
We might just have to repeat for the
Yeah,
Zoom.
so the question is, did Fran Kelly, after she left, after I think it was 17 years, wasn't it, did she give me any tips about, you know, the longevity, how to do that? Fran and I have been friends since 1994. We've talked a lot about it. And I know that she used to get up and do yoga, and she would spend time, you know, just for 15 minutes doing some sort of yoga movements and breathing, and that she would find that very helpful. But at the end of the day, I think what you need is, well, for Fran, she had Marion Frith, who is a fabulous author and has just released her own book. And she had, you've got to have support from the people around you. And look, I still feel like, I cannot believe it, that come August, it will be 3 years since I have been hosting News Breakfast. And like, where did that time go? And I still don't think I've nailed the nap scenario. Like, I mean, some weeks I'll go through without napping. I'll get up at 3, I'll go to bed at 8. Some days, you know, I think it comes back to the mental health as well. There are some days where if I am dealing with, especially aged care, every day on the program, and people are messaging in telling us about their parents' experience and how dreadful it might be, that weight of absorbing people's grief, sometimes I will walk home and I'll just walk into my apartment and lie down on the bed for 40 minutes because I feel like I honestly need to find some mojo to be able to go on with the day. Yeah.
Interesting.
Only 15 years to go.
There was a question. Was it you? Yeah, I think it was, yes.
I'm just wondering, just in recent times, there has been a lot of comment in the media about bullying women. What I'd like to know is, do you think that Parliament or Canberra has enough support for women who work there?
There's a question about bullying of women and whether there's enough support for the women in Canberra. Look, I think it's not just at Parliament House, it's across the board. I mean, some of you may have read that I removed myself from Twitter because of the bullying I sustained. I tried to think, I've been a journalist for 32 years. I haven't suddenly changed how I'm doing journalism. So there's got to be something else going on here. And I tried to push through, but at the end of the day, it was really affecting me. And I thought, I don't need to go to work every day and be bullied. So I just decided to step away from Twitter, and it was the best decision I made, quite frankly. It was great. Claire O'Neill, who is the opposition aged care services spokeswoman, really strongly on the program this week spoke out in support of Nicole Flint's comments where she said she had been bullied as well. I think it's across the board that women are not treated with the respect that they should be. I think there's a lot of people saying this is wrong, we should change it, we should do something, we should look to the companies, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, to say you should not allow this kind of abuse. I know with myself when I was getting some of the, more sort of feral abuse, I contacted Twitter to say, why are these accounts allowed to keep saying this defamatory stuff about me? And it would take Twitter 3 or 4 weeks to get back to me. So I kind of have seen it, and I've seen it close up. And so I feel like we've got a long way to go before we actually treat this properly and seriously enough. I don't know that we're on the right track with it yet.
Interesting. There was a question back here first. Yep. Yes, that's you. Yes.
This is a question to Pip and to Lisa. You started off in regional journalism. How concerned are you about the future of regional journalism?
Good question.
I'm going to start because I hosted a day-long summit last week, Robin, on the future of regional journalism. And look, I think one of the things that has happened that has offered a bit of a brightness on the horizon is the money from Facebook and Google, which is creating more entry-level journalism spots and providing more money, but it does bring with it some issues about control and influence. And I think regional journalism, I feel like it is still that there are positive things ahead, that there are people who have, so there are newspapers that are only online anymore, which is the Gympie Times, so you can't get a print version of that. Where I started, it was very sad, the final day that there was a print version of it. But I do feel like there are some incredible advances that are being made, like Galah magazine, there are things that people are doing that are creative in regional journalism. We need to care for regional journalism. It needs to exist. As the Washington Post used as its slogan, that democracy dies in darkness, and that happens in regional and local areas. If no one's covering the local council, that is bad for everyone. So I think I love the fact that there was a day-long summit about it where people were talking about it. It's definitely something that people are talking about, and we need to keep talking about it.
Hey, Rob. I think that there's a view out there that the ABC fills the gaps in the regions and we're the media of last resort. And the ABC doesn't want to do that. It wants a vibrant regional media like we had 20 years ago. So the politicians can't just pat themselves on the back and say, but the ABC is filling all these spots. That's not the point. We need multiple sources. I mean, we do see some really amazing green shoots, like Narracourt, some locals come back from his high-flying career in the States, bought the paper, bought the press, and he's getting it going. Beaudesert's got a new paper. Young woman's bought the press and putting it out, and it's just online. But that's not enough. So I think the company that bought those titles has really walked away from its commitment to its audience, and I think they're really happy that the ABC sort of, well, there's an expectation in the community the ABC will just fill that spot because that's what.
And we don't want to do that. We don't want to be the only ones in the market.
We don't want to be the only person
either.
at a press conference, and the politicians will love that.
Yeah.
And that's not good. So, yeah, I think with ownership comes responsibilities, and with ownership, the only rule that they probably look at is I have to make some money, and if it's not viable, I mean, I don't know how you get around that. They have to make a profit, but talk to any of the regional journos out there, they're on really low salaries. They get absolutely flogged, and, you know, press releases turn up from all sorts of organisations and they get run in full as a news story. So I think we should all be very worried, but I am heartened every now and then when you hear the good news about a Grazie Her magazine, which opened the same month that Clio shut down.
Yeah, and I do think, and also just that, you know, people are sort of a bit down on the big tech companies, but what I took away from this day-long conference last week, that Facebook and Google, that money that has come in has actually made a difference. So it's kind of a wait and see.
They didn't give it up that easy, though, did they?
No, they did not.
I'll go to the online first, and I'll come to you. Beam Yours asked a few questions, so I'm going to ask a couple of them that are related to you, which is who are or were your mentors, and what advice would you give to up-and-coming young journalists?
So my mentors were Phil Williams and Marion Wilkinson and Pam Williams, and the advice that I would give people is work hard, you know, work hard. Don't sort of think you're above your station, like you know, like pitch in, you know, muck in, do whatever you got to do. It's a team effort. It is a team effort. I used to say to the bureaus that I was the bureau chief of, that doesn't matter if one person here gets all the glory. If we don't all get the glory, if we don't all work for each other, then none of us are going to look good. So, yeah, that's
good advice.
My recommendation.
Good, and the dirty 3:30 as well.
Dirty 3:30.
Question here.
Lisa, earlier on you were talking about the composition of your readership, and it seems as if there's a different, looking at the audience here, there's a bit of a slant towards females, just slightly.
Women read a lot.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I've read the book, and a couple of my mates have read the book, and you know, it's a bloke's book. It's got planes in it.
Oh, thanks.
I was wondering if you had any comments on that in general. I know there's a lot been written about this gender divide, and whether your publishers talked about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I'm now going to use that blurb on the next reprint. It's a bloke's book.
It's got planes in it. I like that.
Look, I think it's a state of, you know, the people here at Avid would tell you that it's women who buy books and women who read and women who are in book clubs. And I appreciate you coming here this evening. I appreciate you reading the book. I've had a lot of men who have contacted me about the book and have said that they have loved it as well. So I think it's just a state of the general book reading, the community. I don't think there's anything different about my book, but thank you.
There's another question from Zoom before we wrap up, which is how do you consider the human factor when interviewing people after an event like Sandy Hook?
Yeah. One of the things that I hadn't contemplated over the years, that it would be different for me in Europe when people were speaking a different language, and that grief can have a bit of a wall and a boundary when you're not speaking the same language. And so Sandy Hook really sticks with me. They were English speaking. I absorbed that grief. I saw it firsthand. I got to the school just hours after the 20 children had been killed and 6 adults. And in Europe, when I was covering all the terrorist attacks, I was conscious that while it was awful, the fact that I could not speak their language gave me a very slight protection from that immediate grief. And I had never thought about that before. How do I mean, look, I just tread lightly. I tread lightly. And honestly, I think that some of the things that I learned from my colleagues at The Sun, I think of my time doing police rounds at the Sun as being so formative, and I worked with so many great reporters, and I feel like everything I do has taught me and taken me one step along the road to the journalist that I am today, when on Monday morning I could find out 5 minutes before an interview that I'm about to interview someone who has gone through great trauma. And that's how it happens. You've got 3 hours of live television. It's not all planned. Suddenly you can get a message in the ear and that you're interviewing someone. And I feel like everything I've learned and all the people who've had an impact in my life have led me to being the person I am today, and how I'm able to treat the people that I interview.
Oh, fantastic. I think that is a really fantastic place to end the conversation
Thanks,
today.
Lucy.
And here at Avid Reader, to answer your question, we are not really big fans of the binary of gender. We quite think that books are for everybody, regardless of your gender expression. And so we think that this is a book that would suit everybody, regardless of who you are or who you've been. It's a very positive, a really special, a brilliant book for a gift or for yourself. So now is the time to celebrate with the signing, which is what we just love. We've missed these instant signings.
And Chrissy,
my
can I
God.
just say, because this is so unusual, because the book was launched in September, and I know a lot of people have turned up here tonight who have already bought the book. I would just hope that you could support Avid Reader. Buy a copy for a friend or a family member. I just have felt for the bookstores over the last period, and if you've already got one, buy another one. I'll sign it out the book. And
it's the signings that we've missed so much. And so I'm so very happy that Lisa could come all the way up here on her own steam to be with us tonight. So thank you so much to Lisa. Thank you, Pip. My darling friend Pip, for coming along tonight. Thank you. I know that you guys, it's a sold out event